Are you ready? Are you prepared? Mentally, possibly physically. Metaphor Refantazio, many people's Game of the Year for 2024. My co-Game of the Year. I love this game to death. It's my favorite Atlus game that I've played. But the internet being the internet, it is a hive of hot takes that will leave you scratching your head in bewilderment that people think this stuff. But I put out the call to arms. I asked you, my audience, my community, to give to me, provide the tithe, your hottest, spiciest, mind-numbing takes in regards to Metaphor Refantazio, and you delivered. Oh, you came in clutch, you delivered Dagger 3, but I will not suffer this alone. Join me as we engage in a bit of hijinks and merriment together. Let's dive right on into this, shall we? And we're going to start with a spicy one. Remember, these are all just for fun. We have at Red Bull 528 who says, aside from a couple of standout tracks, the OST ain't all that. Gonna let that one marinate for a bit, yeah? Just let it simmer, low heat, let it steam, you know? Let all the flavors and the ingredients blend together into a sludge. Then I'm going to hit you with the knife in the back, because I kind of agree. Look, I really do like the soundtrack to Metaphor Refantazio. Of the ones I've listened to in Atlus, it is my least favorite so far. Atlus doesn't really miss when it comes to a soundtrack, so it's like, they don't really make a bad one or anything like that. It's just, for me personally, I prefer the other soundtracks that I've heard in games like Persona 3 Reload, P4 Golden, P5, etc. Those styles of music just engage me more than what I found in Metaphor Refantazio, though the songs with Juna I did think were particular standouts, and the music on the whole was rather good, just not particularly my cup of tea entirely. Not something I'm going to go back to and listen ad nauseum like I do with the Persona soundtracks, for instance, though I know this one will ruffle some feathers. Next up we have at Galaxy123 who says the side dungeons are good. This is the one that gets me. So if I angered you in the last hot take, hold yourself, relax, yeah? Come together with a bit of peace and harmony and channel your frustration into me right now because I'm about to expel it out of my body. Look, at the end of the day, it is personal preference and all that, but allow me this one indulgence because I am not, let's say, a fan of the side dungeons in Metaphor Refantazio. I think it's the worst element to the game. In a world as big and beautiful and magical with a sense of scale that the world of Metaphor Refantazio has with all these sights and sounds and locations and smells, oh my. The fact that pretty much all the side dungeons boil down to insert tower ABC or go to underground crypt 123 XYQ, or here's a forest, here's a slightly greener forest, here's one with a bit of snow. You know what I mean? Whereas the main dungeons have a bunch of cool, unique mechanics that still feel that they are focused around the combat of the game, but they're memorable in their own way, and try and bring something unique to the table. The side dungeons largely just don't do that, and feel rather bland and basic in comparison. Some people will like that. I'm not particularly a fan of dungeons like that, and I still hold an especially special place in my heart just to hate on the volcano dungeon near the end of this game. Screw that dungeon. Half the mobs in there, it's more like 80% of the mobs in there, just repelled physical. It was annoying. But I digress. Let's try and bring it back together, yeah? Let's simmer down. Let's have a take that maybe isn't so hot, and we can center ourselves. We have at Demio6525 who says, this game really gets points taken away from the lack of voice acting in the companion quests. Also, side note, if the DLC doesn't add our favorite bunny monk to our party, I'm gonna riot. Not gonna lie, thought they were referring to the bald monk guy who takes over the church. I think they're talking about Katharina, who I'm still kind of surprised wasn't a party member. Like, that's my hot take. I really did wish she was a party member. But yeah, I think a lot of people, in my experience, and the people that I see talk to me in my chat while I was playing Metaphor Refantazio, playing like Shin Megami Tensei 3 now, and as we talk about Metaphor Refantazio, the biggest takeaway, or at least one of them that I see, is that people are disappointed in the lack of voice acting in Metaphor. And I think in some way, this sentiment comes because, or just comes around because, the voice acting that is there is really dang good. Like, everyone knocks it out of the park. The MC's pretty good, the main party's amazing, Luis is phenomenal, and when the voice acting is there, at least in English for me, it adds this great depth to the characters. and I really do appreciate it. But coming off the back of Persona 3 Reload, where the majority of that game is voiced, even the social links and the followers aren't in Metaphor Refantazio outside of like the first rank and the final one, it is jarring, and I do think it acts as a detriment. I mean, I could have fun with it on stream by doing the voices, like this voice for Basilio, which dang near took my voice out for a week, but I do think going into the future, and if they ever do a Metaphor Refantazio 2, or if they do the Atlus thing and release like Metaphor Refantazio Royal Golden Reload, more voice acting and more consistent voice acting across the board would be greatly appreciated and wanted. Also, give me Katharina, you freaking cowards! We have one that should ruffle a few feathers. We have at Distorted Riolu 4618 who says, imagine loving a game that just repeats the plot of Joker, but in 20 hours or more. See, I have Persona brain rot, so when I read this initially, I thought they were referring to Joker from P5 for some reason. Then I remembered, oh yeah, they made a Joker movie, which I haven't seen. We live in a society, like that's the only meme I know of. And to me, this is just good advertisement for the Joker movie. I think there is a broader discussion to be had in regards to stories and storytelling, in that when you experience enough of them, especially in video games, you can often draw a lot of parallels between one story to another. More often than not, it won't be one for one, but you can generally find a lot of striking similarities, especially when it comes to theme. Like within a 3-month window, I played Persona 5 Royal, Final Fantasy XIV Endwalker, and Xenoblade 1. And again, those games don't tackle the exact same theme, but there's moments in those games where there are drastic parallels between the themes that they're covering. And I think they all do it in an interesting and engaging way. It's just, I think your preference for narratives when it comes down to stuff like that, if you draw those connections, often goes to the first one you experienced, or the one that you experience at just the right time in your life. I want you all to know that I will never forgive each and every single one of you. Yes, you out there, you in particular watching this video, I'll never forgive any of you for making me have to read this out loud on freaking video. We have at its_N4T who says, don't clip this. They didn't say that. They said, words from what my friend said. Yeah, sure. Stroll is breedable. Crying face. Prayer emoji. Don't prayer emoji your way out of this. Trying to act as if this is relatable in some way or the other. See, I don't know what's worse. I genuinely don't know what's worse. Having to read that one out loud and knowing that at some point down the line, an AI program is probably going to use that soundbite to train itself for whatever reason. Or the fact that I don't know if the majority of comments down below will register that as a hot take or a cold take. And I'm like in perpetual fear of which one it is. Okay, we're gonna move swiftly on, because they have a more serious hot take, at least I hope this one's more serious. Would be kind of funny if this one was the joke one. Again, from at itsn4t, who says, spoilers for the final party member. We do spoilers around these parts. Yuffie and Basilio kind of suffer from the late party member joining effect. I kind of get what they mean, but I disagree in certain ways. You get multiple operations with Yuffie, and I don't think Yuffie and Basilio really suffer from late party member joining syndrome, like some other party members from Persona games, like, say, namely Haru from original P5, or say, the two Royal characters from P5 Royal, because I think by the time you get Yuffie and Basilio, there's still a large enough chunk of the game and side content to do that you don't feel as if you only have them for a dungeon. You have quite a bit to still chew on and work through. Like, Basilio being the final party member, I still had a ton of stuff to do with Basilio by the time I actually got him. Because not only do you have a bunch of other side dungeons to do with him, you also, at least I also had, the dragon super bosses to do with Basilio on top of the final main dungeons, and there were still like a couple of them left. I think for some people, they may feel that Yuffie and Basilio suffer from main character joining too late syndrome, because by the time you get them, you probably already have really established other party members from earlier in the game, and you don't want to make the commitment and the time investment to level up, say, Yuffie and Basilio, especially Yuffie, who requires another resource to grind out with the summon system. Especially that late in the game, you might as well, or at least some people will feel they want to just stick with what they know and what already worked for them up to that point. I get that, I do, but I think with the way that the XP system did turn out in Metaphor Refantazio, you can can get Yuffie and Basilio up to snuff in terms of archetype level XP rather quickly, because whenever anyone's maxed rank for an archetype, they just generate XP items that you can use on, say, Yuffie and Basilio, which is what I did, and you can, like, bang out these levels really quickly, especially when you paired alongside some items that just let you insta-kill mobs in the overworld. It's really nice. I think in terms of story, they did a good enough job building up both Yuffie and Basilio in their own unique ways. Yuffie, you had the entire Virga Island arc, as well as them foreshadowing some stuff with Mystari people before that, especially in side content like grinding up the royal virtues, that I think you get enough investment with Yuffie to care about it as a character. And one of the things Atlus always does well, and especially in Metaphor Refantazio, is being able to introduce a whole new character and make them feel as if they were there from the start. At least they do that for me. And then when it comes to Basilio, he had been a major character in the story alongside Fidelio throughout most of the plot, especially back in Brilhaven. So I think by the time he actually joins the party proper, you have enough emotional investment in that character with Basilio to where you already know how he interacts with all the other party members pretty much, and he just kind of fits like a glove. Personally speaking, I really liked how they handled implementing Yuffie and Basilio into the game, because it's an RPG, you still want to get new characters and new stuff, even late into the game to spice things up. So some people will always have that late character syndrome to some people, but I think they handled it well enough in Metaphor Refantazio. Next up, we have at Airfry Jimmy, who says the name blows, but in a cool way. And I know when you say it out loud and when you try and like break this down, it may not make a lot of sense, but spiritually, I do kind of agree. Like, it's a vibe thing, right? Metaphor Refantazio. It just sounds cool, but at the same time, what the hell's a Refantazio? It's like blending two different languages together. It's kind of cool, but in a blowy kind of way. It's like somebody saying sayonara, amigo. You know what I mean? Like, you could make it work. But yeah. For the final hot take of the video, we have at Memory Gaming, who says, the game lost its chance of being an all-time classic after the events of 9/11. Never forget, it all went downhill from the moment they decided to kill off Rella without any build-up. The final story dungeons are an insult to games that have real dungeon designs. I disagree for the most part. I have seen quite a bit of takes in regards to Rella. Yes, I do agree that part of the story did feel a little bit rushed, and I wished we had more time with Rella. I don't think the way they handled it, though, ruins anything for me. She was a victim and was utilized as a tool by the church. I think they managed to convey that in an effective way enough in the story and with what happened. Could it have been fleshed out, and could we have had more? Absolutely, especially with the old mage college, right? Absolutely, that should have been a dungeon, but I don't think that it necessarily ruins or compromises the entire story and what they managed to accomplish there, because one section felt a little bit rushed. It was a major one. I can understand why people wouldn't like it as much, but I think the rest of it is good enough, and by good enough, I mean I still loved it a lot, that I don't mind it having this one fault because the rest was so good and compelling for me. The final story dungeons, they're alright, right? Like, they're solidly okay. I kind of like having those optional side bosses you can do in the final main dungeon to weaken the final fight against Louise. I think that's pretty cool. I like it when games do that. They do both just generally feel like XP farms to make sure you're high enough level to take on the final boss. That's what it largely feels like to me. Could have had some more interesting and unique mechanics there. I kind of blazed through the final dungeon because I just had enough of those food items you cooked that made it so you just one-tap all the mobs in the overworld. So I just kept spamming those. It was kind of comedy. I think the only dungeon that really felt like it dragged on too far was the final Royal Palace dungeon, like the second to last dungeon. That one did kind of just drag on a bit, but I don't have any big overarching critiques of the finale of Metaphor Refantazio like I've seen be thrown around a bit. Is it necessarily perfect? No, but I wouldn't call it bad either. I think it was hard carried by the story and what was going on, how invested I was there, and I also still really enjoyed the actual gameplay. It's one of those situations where it could have been better in my opinion, but what was there was still good enough, and the story I was entirely engrossed by, so I walked away still really happy about the game. I mean, it's my co-game of the year alongside Final Fantasy VII Rebirth for 2024 for me. I absolutely adore the game. But I don't think, like any other game, it's not a perfect game. And I think if you hunt only for perfection when it comes to enjoying media and enjoying games, you will more often than not find yourself disappointed with more things than you probably would otherwise. Like, I get the idea, because I used to be like that as well, and I kind of had to train myself to look out for the good things and look out for the things that I enjoy, because I just enjoyed games more by doing so. And I think that really did help with Metaphor Refantazio and helped with why I loved it so much. And I think with that, I'll call the video there for the day. Thank you all for tuning in. My pleasure making the video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a comment down below with your own hot take, because trust me, there were plenty more where this came from. And there's a hot take that's so spicy it deserves its own video by itself. And yes, it's concerning the lack of romance in Metaphor Refantazio. That one will come in the next few days. Thank you all for tuning in. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out and helps support future content, and I greatly appreciate it. Stay safe, have a great day, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody. Until we meet again.